welcome to the very first episode of what is probably going to become the Warrior Within podcast. My name's Stu, and I'm going to introduce you to the founder of the Warrior Within project, Stefan Daniel. Stefan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stu. Yeah, my name's Stefan Daniel. I'm the founder of the Warrior Within podcast and the Warrior Within project here in Plymouth, and we help veterans with various things, including mental health, by providing free training in a martial arts facility, ultimately using Muay Thai, cold water therapy, meditation, deep stretching, yoga, stuff like that. And this is the first one of many. We've invited our good friend and my fellow Army veteran. We were in the same regiment together, Mr. Tom Adams, and he's going to have a little chat with us about what he's been doing, before he joined the Army and during and after. And yeah, that's what we're going to do today. And he came training today with us.
He did indeed,
which he said was really, really easy.
Starting to regret my life decisions now on that.
He's regretting. He's regretting having eggs Benedict prior to
10 minutes before training. Yeah,
I saw him and he was eating it. I was like, man, you don't want to be eating that before training.
He was telling me afterwards, like it's lovely when you're eating, eggs Benedict. It's not nice when you see it come back the other way.
No, it came close. Close.
Yeah. Especially when you're, in the middle of doing burpees or something like that in the gym.
For sure. And we learned that lesson very quickly. Don't eat before you come for a workout. Correct. So good to know. So I guess really we should probably start with, how do you guys actually know each other? Since saying he's a guest is one thing, but you guys are friends, right? You've known each other a long time.
Yeah, a little bit. We were in the same regiment, but our timings were slightly different. I was away teaching while Tom was in Recce Troop, and I was in Recce Troop prior to him.
Okay.
But we kind of knew of each other, and
I think we sort of knew each other, but our paths didn't really cross a great deal. I knew who Ski was. I think everyone in the regiment knew who Ski was. Just that guy you walk past and you look the other way.
I was going to say, yeah, there's definitely a story behind that.
It was just that there was a few ranks above me, and I was a young trooper and he was a sergeant, I believe, at the time. Okay. So our paths didn't really cross. Different sort of squadrons, and then when he left Recce Troop and on to training, I moved into Recce Troop. So we knew each other, but didn't really pass each other.
Just for people that maybe don't know much about military kind of life, like myself, I guess. When you say Recce Group, what do you mean? When you say regiment, like you call it Recce something?
So within your regiment, you have your squadrons.
Right.
You have especially the Queens Royal Hussars that we were in. You had the A, B, C, D, and then you had Command Troop, which looked after the radios and that sort of stuff. And then you had Recce Troop, which was technically smaller vehicles behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence, and it was an honour to be in Recce Troop within the regiment. It was definitely an achievement to get to Recce Troop, because you're sort of picked within your squadron. Almost like I always say best of the best within the squadrons get chosen for Recce Troop, where your training is probably a bit more advanced. They expect a lot more from you.
Right. You have to be fitter.
You have to be fitter. Everyone else. Yeah. You basically, I'd say you're top 5% within the regiment. Yeah. Get to go into Recce Troop.
You do a lot of work on your own. You work directly with like the division and the battle group instead of like just within the regiment. So it's
gotcha. Okay.
Yes, I don't know. I enjoyed my time in Recce Troop for sure. It's my favourite part of my career.
Yeah, it was good. It was. I think getting to there is great. I mean, once you become Recce Troop, I mean, you walk around with your head held on anyway, being in the military and the Queens Royal Hussars, but when you make Recce Troop, you walk then with your held head high within the regiment, so you feel a bit better than everyone else, and you just feel that sort of privilege. It was definitely an achievement within the regiment to get to Recce Troop.
Okay, thank you very much for letting me know. I had no idea when it comes to kind of any kind of regiments. Really, unfortunately, I was never in the forces. I've had a lot of experience with people, and Stefan and I, we met about a year ago, but realistically, it's not something I have much experience with. So it's good to get some insight there, and I'm assuming there'll be people that'll be listening that also don't know as well. So I guess tell us a little bit about, how did you, I guess, from the process of signing up to kind of where you are now. Let's start from the beginning.
As a child, I was never one to join the military. I've never come from a military background. My parents were in the military. I wasn't exposed to anything military growing up. I'm not going to sit here and say my childhood was really difficult. I'm not going to say it's really easy. There was moments where, I think there was, I think a lot of childhoods probably the same. You get a bit of bullying at school.
Sure.
You don't fit in. You find it hard to find where you belong. Even with my close knit friends, I was almost like a little bit bullied within that close group as well. So it was really difficult growing up. My mum was disabled. She got rheumatoid arthritis. And there's a few moments that stick out in my mind where my mum was really ill and she'd be in bed screaming, saying she wants to be with her mum, and her mum passed away in 1986. So as a young child going through that, it's not a great experience.
No, not at all.
I'm not saying that moulded me into joining the army, but it just sort of probably subconsciously made me a little bit stronger minded.
For sure, yeah.
My dad worked nights, so I very rarely see my dad. So my dad would work like 12-hour shifts because my mum didn't work, so he had to work super hard to pay the bills and keep me and my two sisters. So childhood was at its moments, but also had its good moments. I used to play football every time after school, like a lot of kids. But it's weird because during school time, your group of friends, but I got a little bit of bullying within that friends.
Yeah.
As soon as you leave school, as soon as you're out in your estate, that all stops. So it was a great time then, but school time wasn't great for me.
What part of the country was this? Were you?
Worcester.
Worcester.
So Worcester, the Midlands area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So normal school. I mean, it's probably a better school now than what it was back then. I think in the 90s, a lot of schools weren't really up to scratch.
No.
It was difficult. So I technically call myself like an in-betweener. I was never with the sort of intelligent, geeky kids as it was. And I was never with the sort of fighters and the sort of roughneck kids. I was in the middle. But I knew groups from all categories. So I found it really hard to find where I belonged. There was a certain amount of bullying within my childhood, which probably is bittersweet now because those kids that did do the bullying, I see them now and they're like, "Oh, Tom, you're doing really well," shake my hand and see him in town, and there's a bit of pride there. It's basically a middle finger jobby sort of thing,
yeah.
which is always great. Never once did I ever think about joining the military, and it wasn't until I was 21. So I joined quite late. I didn't go at 16. Like, did you join?
I joined at 16.
Yeah, so a lot of people go from 16 from school. I didn't.
Right.
I did an apprenticeship before joining the military.
Do you remember the moment when you thought, "This is what I'm going to do"?
It's a weird story. So I had a day off school, a day off work, because I had a funeral to go to that day. My cousin, Ian Stenson, who was also in the same regiment, had joined up, but he was just going for the interviews at the army careers.
Okay.
And I had a day off, and I thought, I'll come down with you. Still to that moment, I was literally not even considering the army. I had no reason to join the army. I was just finishing my apprenticeship as a stonemason. And I remember going down to the army careers and sitting in there, and it was Sergeant Q, Neil Q.
Yeah.
He definitely, I don't know what he does now. He's definitely got to be in sales or something because he sold me the dream. I went and he literally said, "Sit in that room there in our interview." My cousin there, Ian. And I sat in the room and he put the video on. It's the best video in the military. You go skiing, you play football.
Selling the dream.
There's a video of you in the pub drinking, and it's like they're selling the dream. And I was like, you know what? That looks like good fun, and you get paid for it. So I literally was like, where can I sign?
Right.
So it wasn't until that moment I had ever considered the army. And they put me on the scales, did the old weight, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, you're a bit heavy," sort of thing, And I thought, well, just send me to the weekend in Lichfield for the selection.
Mm-hmm.
If I pass, I pass. If I don't, I don't. It's not something I'm passionate about at this moment. So I literally joined on a bit of a day off work, really.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah,
it's funny to think about now, I'm sure, but that decision shaped your entire life, really.
Yeah, I mean that one decision on that one day completely changed my mindset and the whole of how my life's turned out. Completely changed. I was probably at that point going down a path of like a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, getting involved with a lot of girls, driving your cars, hanging around McDonald's, getting a bit of trouble, a bit of bother. So I'm not saying my life would have gone down that route, but I was certainly...
Do you say hanging around McDonald's?
Oh yeah, in your car, you know what I mean? Big exhaust, and try and get the chicks. That's where you hang
People
out.
still do that now, don't they?
I think they do.
Okay.
I do.
I think they're on electric scooters though.
All right. Fair.
But yeah, I was just doing a lot of that. So yeah, but that one day I had off for a funeral, completely changed and transformed my path through life.
It's strange how life does that. You have these pivotal moments and you weren't expecting something, and then your life takes a completely different direction.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think it's all kind of, maybe it's supposed to happen that way,
Yeah, I think your life's already panned out for you.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We're getting real deep, real early. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll come back to that.
We're going deep early.
Yeah. We'll come back to that.
Around.
The kind of philosophical side we can definitely re-explore later. But talk us through. So you've made this decision now. You've seen the video. You've been sold the dream. What are your first? It's 12 weeks of training, right?
12 weeks. Yeah. Well, you got selection first. You have like 2 days at Lichfield selection.
Okay.
To whether you can meet the criteria of the British Army and the standard. You have your 1.5 mile run. You do your tests, your fitness test, your medical. But actually, the first time I went down there, I actually failed. I actually failed. So I was dreading it anyway. I was absolutely really getting concerned. I was like, okay, I'm a bit overweight. I've never run a mile in my life, and they're expecting me to do all this, and I'm like, I haven't got a clue. But I failed my medical, so I got down there and I had a heart murmur. I think a lot of people have a heart murmur. They pick up on heart murmur. They send you away and you get tested, and I was sort of okay, but it gave me those extra few weeks to thought, okay, I need to do something. And but the second time I went back for selection, I still hadn't run a mile. I still didn't take it serious. So I'll just wing it.
That's the thing, right? Because when you're young, 1.5 miles doesn't feel like it's a long way to run. But anyone who's never run before, it's actually really difficult to do.
It's probably the hardest part of a run. The first mile is probably the hardest part because your heart rate increases massively. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I remember going there and not once have I run a mile in my life. Oh. And I got there. And we did circuit training first, and I was like, almost as bad as the one this morning, to be fair. I almost had flashbacks of that selection. But I literally, did the circuits, and I thought, this isn't for me. I'm really struggling. I'm looking around all these young lads and all these people that have obviously dreamt to be in the army, and I'm thinking, this isn't for me. Let me do the beep test, and I did okay in the beep test. I think I just kept going. I thought, if I'm not the last, then there's a chance. Yeah. And then we did the run, and I remember standing at the start line, looking at everybody in their little tiny shorts, running trainers, and I'm thinking, I'm wearing like my football shorts and a cotton t-shirt, thinking, I'm certainly not in this category. I shouldn't really be here. And off we went, and I think the cut-off time was like 12 minutes, which, looking back, it's probably quite a long time. But I think I did it at 11:55. So I just came in.
A win is a win.
I thought, well, that's the cut-off point. I'm going to make sure I get to the cut-off point. I'm not in trying to impress. Mm-hmm. But I literally, I struggled to get through that finish line at 11:55. And I passed that, and and I obviously joined the Queens Royal Hussars.
And then you have your 12 weeks of training at that point. And that's when your life is turned upside down. You're like,
so I remember going in, and I think there was about a 4 or 5 week from passing selection, and anyone would think, well, now I know what's like, I need to be training. Because I passed selection, I almost thought, I've done it. Yeah. I'm all right now. Yeah. And I rocked up to selection, rocked up to phase 1 training, and they do all your medical and that sort of stuff. And I weighed 16 stone 4, which... I mean, I'm 6 foot, but 6'4", I'm still carrying a bit of body fat. And I remember, and it took me back to my childhood, because I remember going into the first PT session where they beast you almost to find where your level is. And I was singled out by the PTI, which is the personal trainer, the physical training instructor.
Right.
And he would literally call me bitch tits. So like man boobs, things like that. I mean, it won't happen this day and age. It won't be allowed. So I was singled out straight away as bitch tits and all that sort of stuff, and they'd make me jump on the crash mat, on a big thick crash mat, knees to chest, which is really hard. But this is where my mindset shifted. Mm-hmm. This is where I thought, I need to turn this into drive. Yeah. Fuel. To fuel. Yeah. And no matter what they threw at us during that training, I knuckled down. The sergeant used to come in. I remember it now. He used to come in, and we were all young lads. We were away from our homes. We were sort of in the army. At this point, you think you've already made it. You think you're great. And so your room was a bit of a mess, your bed wasn't made. So the sergeant would have us running around the parade square
Right.
on our hands and knees making pig noises. You want to live like pigs, you act like pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of thing. And there's always discipline that started to throw into my life, which completely changed my mindset. And and I literally went there, and the training was probably the hardest 12 weeks of my life. I was certainly at the back of the pack when it comes to the fitness, not so much the academic side of it all.
Right.
Like your weapon handling and all that sort of stuff. I was quite on your signals, all that radio, so I was quite good at that. But I was definitely at the back of the group when it comes to the sort of fitness and the physicality of it all.
But hey, you did it all the same, right?
Yeah.
This is all in Winchester.
In Winchester, yeah. So down Winchester 12 weeks. But I've passed out at 13 stone 1. So within 12 weeks, I lost just over 3 stone.
Which, for anybody who's ever tried to lose any weight whatsoever, will know that's an incredible amount of weight to shift in that.
Yeah, I just think that the constant comments and the digs from my hierarchy, which when I look back was probably wrong, but then I also understand why.
Well, I've got a question for you both, actually, around that, because you did kind of mention that in this day and age, it's probably not the road they would take necessarily. I know there was a lot, particularly with the PTIs, a lot of kind of singling people out and trying to push them to their limits by, I don't want to call it bullying, that's not the right word for it, but it does borderline a little bit. I used to see it when I was working down with the Navy, so you can see what it does to people. But did you ever experience the opposite of that, where it demotivated somebody, it didn't give them the motivation, or did everybody eventually get the mind shift, do you think?
No, I think I've seen it work in the opposite way, where it's like broken people when they've left, for sure.
And do you think that's a better thing? Because
I think that's one of the reasons that they do it. You've got to be mentally strong. I know it's not the right way to do it, but it's, it makes you robust, and you've got to have a strong mind and a strong body to get through all that.
Because there's a level of trauma you're going to see and be experienced to within the army, within any of the forces potentially, where if you are sent to a war zone, if you're sent somewhere that's struggling and you have to fight, you're going to see things a lot worse than how you have been bullied within the basic training side of things. And I'm using the word bullying, and I really don't know a better word to use for it at this point. But
technically was bullying.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't when you got sergeants in training singling you out and literally just constantly on you. They're constantly, but I understand that they are literally on you for a reason.
Yeah.
They know you can do better, but like skis to them, it can break you as well.
Yeah.
You can either look at it as fuel and motivation, or you can keep looking at it and just beat yourself up and go, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
And that's what the army are trying to find. They're mentally strong.
And that's what you needed as well. Obviously,
Yeah.
you want people that you can trust in the worst situations to have your back and do the right thing. So it's always a fascinating subject for me. Again, I've not lived that life. I've seen it and I've experienced it from third position. Anyone who's ever watched a film has seen it from that angle. But I do think it's kind of lost to time that level of pushing. It has been quite important in nurturing the soldiers of tomorrow and keeping people focused, I guess is the best way to put it, on what they are there to achieve and what they're there to do. And as much as it can break people and get them out, I don't think necessarily that's a bad thing sometimes. And you need, we see it with Muay Thai training as well to some degree, not to bring it all full circle or whatever, but that if you just can't handle the basics of the exercise, no amount of pushing is going to help that anyway. So it's usually better that you do step away from it and don't hurt yourself.
I think
someone else.
help somebody find out who they are and what they're about.
Yeah, exactly right.
If they can't handle the pressure in fighting or whatever it may be, then that's not for them.
Yeah, fully.
They can go, okay, I've tried, that's not for me. And that's when the instructor would go, okay, this is why we pushed you. This is why. As long as there's an understanding, not just, oh, he's a bully.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can stand back and go, okay, this isn't for me. This, I gave it a go, it isn't for me. It's not the path I want to take. And they can go and find their path in life.
Exactly right, yeah. And you've both been shaped positively, I would say, arguably, for the most part, I would hope, by these kind of life lessons as well. I know Stefan uses them when he's doing Muay Thai. I've never heard him ever even come close to bullying someone, but he will push you to your limits to ensure you're getting not just the best out of the session, but he gets the best out of you as well. And the principle's the same essentially. So.
Yeah, I mean, I witnessed it this morning. My son did training with us. He's not doesn't do a great deal of training.
He did, yes, he did.
But Stefan pushed him.
And he did it, by the
He
way.
pushed it.
Yeah.
But he gave him that, at the end of it, a well done.
Yeah.
So, and then also, you would feel proud then. You think, well, I've achieved it. And I've made my instructor proud. And, you know, and that's what you want in terms of feedback.
For the viewers that can't see, he is sat in the room. We're just going to give him his flowers and just say, you did an incredible job, by the way. And, yeah, it's not easy. That session this morning was very, very
sleeping
difficult.
in the car on the way home now.
For sure. For sure.
To be fair, well, I'm done here. I'm sleeping.
So are you.
I know. I'm supposed to be driving as well.
All right. So you've gone through very, very difficult process of basic training. You've passed out now. You've joined the army. This is kind of where life changes, I guess, for both of you. You know, when you go through this, but very specifically, you know, now. Firstly, what did you expect when you passed out? What was the expectation versus the reality of where you actually ended up?
When I passed out of the army, you go to phase 2 and you do your tank training because we were a tank regiment. But when you get to the regiment, I wasn't too sure whether it was still for me or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because training, you look at your sergeants, your corporals, and you're like, yes, corporal, no, corporal. And I thought, is that the life I want for the next 10, 20 years, living that structure? But as I got to regiment, you realise your sergeants and your corporals, they become friends.
Right.
But during the setting and during working hours, there's that respect. You know, I'd always call ski sergeant or staff sergeant, or whatever it may be. But everyone becomes brothers, and it is true. Everyone becomes brothers and sort of help each other out. There's no judgment. There's I say about the bullying again. At the regiment, there's very little, very little. But because at this point, you knew whether this is for you or not.
Whether you're literally your brothers now, aren't they?
And I think the sergeants, PTIs in the regiment, they sort of knew. They knew, okay, you've made it through this far. They respected you for that, and I think that showed. When you got to regiment, it became a big family.
Yeah. And
it was definitely a lot easier in the regiment than it was during training. Training's there for a reason. It's there to sort of, you know, weed out the weak and make the strong.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, literally the regiment, it was Royal Department training. But at that point, you've learned respect, you've learned discipline, and you've learned a lot of skills, mentally and physically. So the regiment was a lot easier life than the training.
Does that echo your own experience?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, training's always going to be the hardest bit. Obviously, we had difficult times through our military career when you go operational tours and all this other stuff, which we'll probably cover it. But regimental life itself was pretty cool. We were we'd go down the Naffy bar and have a couple of beers in the evening, and
we're weekend millionaires.
Oh, yeah.
We literally live for the weekends. Yeah. Literally, I mean, I knew lads selling furniture out their rooms to go out drinking.
Yeah.
It was definitely that. We were that generation where it was literally weekend. You live for the weekend.
Well, we're in Germany as well, so obviously it's
so we lived in Germany, so
a bit cheaper. You're paying like £1 for a bottle of beer in the mess or in the Maffy.
I remember the one kind of nightclub, and it was 5 cent at Vodka Rebel.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And so you used to buy a tray. Fun Factory it was called. And,
Fun Factory.
The Fun Factory by name, eh?
Yeah, you go in there. It was like 5 cents for Vodka Rebel. So it was. I think our generation, we lived that weekend.
Yeah.
Because we were young and we were living away from home in Germany, and you're basically spending all your time with your friends and your brothers and that. And so it's definitely a weekend millionaires. For the first 2 weekends anyway.
Yeah, and then you were skint.
then you look at
then your friends, you'd be like, "Oh, I can't come out. I've got no money." You might go, "No, I'll lend you 50 Deutschmarks or euros, whatever it was, and pay it back next month." And you're like, "Oh," and then you're out again, and then it's like. But what was I going to say to you? I can't remember now. It's gone.
Well,
it'll come back to me.
Well, what I will say is that was echoed in normal civilian life as well. Like we were payday millionaires.
Yeah.
In 2003, I was working in Butlins, which is nothing like the army, obviously. But you wait for that weekend, you get your paycheck, you go out, you blow it all in that one weekend, and then you're eating pot noodles for the rest of the month.
I think I was going to say we're the fittest alcoholics that you could ever meet, because we would drink literally all weekend, and then Monday we'd be running, tabbing, whatever, doing everyday hard physical tasks.
In my current age, I can't think of anything worse than going on a night out and then having to go and do any kind of training.
It takes about 3 days to recover now.
Yeah. I mean, you used to come in at 6 a.m. sometimes, and you're on PT at 7,
and
you've been drinking vodka Red Bull all night, and you're thinking, I don't know. I don't even. Some sessions I didn't even remember.
It's a hard pass for me. I'll never do that.
It's pretty tough, but you get used to it.
Yeah, I bet.
It became the norm.
Yeah.
So, this part of kind of your career within the army now is like this is before you've had any deployments, I assume.
Yeah.
So, do you remember your first major deployment, and where was that to? Where was that to? Excuse me.
2003 was my first real deployment, operational tour. Previous to that, we had done training, went to Canada and did some training over there. But first operational tour was Iraq 2003.
Oh, okay. So for anyone who's kind of in the same age bracket as myself, you will remember the Iraq War and how that sort of came about as well, off the back of realistically 9/11 kind of really rallied that up. I know there was a tour before that in the early 90s, I think it was. Where
first Gulf, which ski was on?
I didn't realise you did the first deployment as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so you've seen both. Yeah. Post and pre 9/11 really as well.
But the Gulf War was different to the tour we're talking about. This tour was more in kind of built up areas where the Gulf War you're in a desert, literally doing tank battles. So
this was at the apex and this kind of height of the world had kind of changed at this point as well, hadn't it? 2001 onwards, it had felt like there was a shift in the world, and now you're being deployed to this war zone, which had been going on by this point for a couple of years. Tell us a bit about that.
I think I was about 22 years old, and I remember having a meeting on the parade square saying that we're training now for Iraq and that. And as a first deployment, but this is what we've trained for.
Yep.
So there was a bit of excitement going, we're actually going to go and do our job. But there was also moments where you think, this ain't good. This could go south.
Of course.
And Optelic 1 and 2, because it was Optelic 3 that we were on. So Optelic 1 and 2 already out there. And we were losing quite a lot of soldiers at that point. So there was always that bit of nervousness going into it all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a moment where you think, well, it's real now. We've been having fun. We've been on exercise, playing soldiers, having great times, things like that. But when it comes to it, this is the real deal now. So you got to switch on. And on Optelic 3, I was chosen to be the squadron leader rover group, which is technically close protection for the squadron leader when he goes to do the meetings.
Right.
So I wasn't protected in a big troop or in a tank. There was only a few of us really.
Right.
And we're always vulnerable and solo out on the ground, going to some meetings which, there was a lot of politics involved. So there was a high threat on a lot of the meetings we used to go to. It was definitely knowing we were going out there as a rover group was quite a nervous time.
At this point in your life, excuse me for bringing this up, I'm sure it was going to come up anyway, but obviously you're married. Yeah. And were you with your partner at that point?
No, I was between. No, I was single. No, I was single back then. I think anyone in the army, it's difficult to have a relationship.
For sure, yeah.
Very difficult. I had a few girlfriends between times, but they would never last. 'Cause I lived in Germany, and it just never laughed. And so as I was single when I went out onto the first Optelic 3. I was single and just really my parents to worry about me, really, no one else.
Okay, all right.
I think one of the things, that I knew, once we were like going to war, one of the tours was when they went, right, you'll need to write a letter home to your parents in case you don't come back.
Yeah, I remember the letter and the will in a little brown envelope. And then I remember I had to pack our rooms up into these big boxes in case we got killed. Yeah. So our rooms. So you're going through these emotions of packing your room up, thinking, I'm packing my room up in case I die.
Yeah.
And then you're writing your final letter, which I believe I might still have actually somewhere. But also the final letter you write to your parents, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened, blah blah. And then you write your little will and things like that. So it became very real, very quick. When you're packing your room up ready to go.
I mean, it's for somebody who hasn't lived that, it's quite a, you can use the word insane, but it's not the word I'm looking for really, but just that's a mad process to go through. Yeah. Like you're basically preparing.
It's not normal.
Yeah,
it's not normal.
What does that do to you kind of mentally, like having to almost prepare your final words and just hope it never happens?
Well, you don't know what to say, do you?
No, yeah.
It's a difficult one. You don't know what to write because you know your parents at this point are going to be absolutely in pieces.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a difficult. And I think this is where you do a lot of growing up when it becomes very, very real. And like we were saying, when you pack your room up, and you've got your boxes, you put your clothes away, you put all your personal belongings away, your photographs, put in a box. You think, well, if the worst was to happen, the next time this box is opened is by your family.
Yeah.
So it's
wild.
it's a process which I can look back now and think I was probably quite difficult, but at the time it was like everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
So it felt just part of the job. It just felt quite long. When you look back, it's not until you look back you realise, well, actually that was probably a really difficult thing to do, but didn't realise then.
No,
because everyone was doing it. So
it was an in it together situation.
Yeah, it was definitely mixed emotions.
Right.
And I think back then it was definitely hard to show any form of emotion too much to even though everyone was feeling it, but everyone put its brave face on saying, oh, it's great, we're going to war. But I think deep down everyone was really struggling.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can only imagine. Like it's the mindset you must have been in.
I think one thing that we've used a lot within the army or in the regiment is like dark humour to get us through times like that.
Yeah.
We'd be a lot of sarcasm, a lot of taking the mick out of each other.
Right.
But generally that was used as a mask to kind of get through what you were going through, you know.
Right.
But you didn't realise it at the time. It's when you step back afterwards and you go, oh yeah, I can see why it was like that, you know.
I remember actually because me and another guy in the regiment, Ashley, we were joking around, and I had a BMW this time, and he liked my spoiler.
Right.
And I said, I'll write in my will, I'll leave my spoiler to you. And I remember doing little things like that, but I mean that was just basically masking what we were really feeling. It was put a bit of humour into it, even though it was on my will.
Yeah.
So he would have to have my spoiler.
It's real. Yeah, it's legal.
Yeah, I mean, but it was definitely covering and masking the real emotions and trying to put a bit of humour into it to make it a little bit easier.
I think it's a side of military life that, you know, it's very easy to forget about as a civilian. You know, you guys are going to the front lines, putting your life on the lines, and these small details of, I say small, but you know what I mean, writing a will to send to your family should the worst happen. You just don't think about that, and it's, you know,
civilians wouldn't even think about it. And this is where soldiers have to go through all these different emotions and actions which can affect you mentally.
Yeah.
As a young 21-year-old, 22-year-old, and younger than me, some of the lads, 18, 19, 17 years old, for them, 18 years old, to write a letter to your parents to say, if you're reading this, you know, the worst has happened.
My mum had to go when I was to the first Gulf. I was 18 when I did all this. My mum had to go to a support group for mothers of sons or children that are in Iraq in the Gulf War. Gosh. And she went like with all these other mums, and they'd all, you know, cry together, all the stuff that they used to do. And so I know she really struggled with it, you know. Yeah.
Again, the families as well. It's a lot to go through. Especially as a young man.
You don't think about your parents. I mean, their son or their daughter's going away to war, and they're thinking, well, they might be the last time to see them. So they're putting a brave face on.
Yeah.
You know, and it's they're going through emotions probably, if not worse, than what we are.
And I imagine they're also trying to mask their own emotions so they don't affect you as well.
Yeah.
Like that's just circle of life. That's wild to think about.
You definitely have to, when you're on tour, you kind of put all that away. You don't think about any of that, do you?
No, you have to sort of.
You've got to be in the moment permanently, because you've got to have your wits about you.
And it's weird. I've been having this conversation with my wife recently, actually, about emotions. I find it real hard lately to show my emotions too much. I tend to box them up and put them away because I just don't want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I went there, it'd bring out more emotions.
Yeah.
Almost open the box up.
Well,
Once I start, that's it. So there's so many emotions, so many things I've gone through in my life that I probably wouldn't think about. Like, I mean, the letter then, I haven't really thought about that since we did it. You know, but those moments are like quite traumatic for a young person to go through.
Because we've probably put them boxed up.
But
I think it's important to talk about it and bring it out. You know, because that's when you keep it all in. Eventually, it's got to come out. Some way or another. And if you can get out in a healthy way by, you know, like we did with the martial arts, because you're letting out emotion, you know, you're letting some steam off, or like this, we're talking about stuff. I think it's important for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, and that's really what the Warrior Within project is kind of all about from a veteran's point of view, right? It's it's helping people through very, very difficult and traumatic.
But you can understand
experiences.
from these little conversations. Then you can see why there's a lot of people out there struggling.
Fully, yeah, fully.
When you have to go through all those different
Because
emotions.
and remember, when you're in there, you've got all your friends, all your mates. You've been going through all this together, and it's down the bar, and it's okay. You're not talking about all, writing the letters and all the other stuff we saw. But when you come out, you're kind of on your own. And even if you've got a wife and a family, it's very difficult to talk to them because they haven't kind of experienced what you went through.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can only ever talk to another veteran because like we were taught, we understand because we've been through it.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to open up to your family because the response you want, you're not going to get because they don't understand the severity of what you've been through.
And I imagine there's a level of expectation with people you speak to when you do come out, when you are trying to relay some of the things you've seen and done, or even feel about certain situations where they expect you to be the big, strong, tough person, and you're just going to get on with life, pull your socks up. All the awful things you hear in just everyday society anyway, it must be amplified for people who are expected to be both strong and kind of emotionless to some degree. So it must be a very, very difficult thing to come out and have to relive in any form whatsoever.
I think definitely, yeah. I think in the army, you've gone through your career. I mean, ski was a lot longer than me, but you've boxed throughout your army career. You box all your emotions up, and it's so much easier just get on with it. That's your job, and you got your brothers around you. The minute you leave, is when you haven't got that support network.
Right.
You haven't got your brothers around you, and your civilian friends may be great, but they're not going to understand what you've been through, or what you've seen, or what your emotions are. So it's definitely a difficult one.
So how many tours did you do in Iraq?
I did two tours of Iraq.
Okay.
And the second tour was a lot worse than the first tour. The first tour was, as crazy as it sounds, was a lot easier.
Right.
Because you knew who you were fighting.
Yeah.
It was literally SA-80s on AK-47s, and you knew who you were fighting. So you'd go on patrol and you get contacted and you knew who you were fighting. The second tour was a whole new ball game.
Right.
IEDs, which got so advanced, it was ridiculous.
Just because I'm an idiot. IEDs?
Improvised explosive device.
Right, so literally homemade bombs.
They'd literally, and they'd be buried under the tarmac, under the road.
But they're very sophisticated, they were always learning new ways and techniques to be able to kind of outfox us to, kill as many people as possible.
So yeah, and then the mortar threat, mortar with the rockets come over obviously into the camp, that stepped up another level. I mean, we're on the second tour, 2006. The camp I was on, Abanaji, was involved in the biggest mortar attacks in Second World War.
Wow.
And there was 147 rockets was fired onto camp within 7 minutes.
Wow.
And it was like a rain of missiles coming down. And the accommodation next to me got hit. One of the females lost her leg.
Wow.
And there was blood everywhere. And then we would literally try and take cover. We built sandbags. And I remember lying, and you're told to hit the floor, put your body armour on, hit the floor. I remember being in the accommodation, and me and a few of the lads, we hit the floor, because I think it was about 5 in the morning happened. We jumped on the floor, put our helmets on. I thought, what's I'm going to save you, really? A helmet and a body armour. If a rocket hit you, you're going to end up in pieces. And I always remember a mortar landing underneath the accommodation.
Oh, wow.
And we heard it. And literally, we lay there and just froze and waited for that explosion. It didn't, so we jumped out and we run around the corner and got next to these sandbags out in the open, got on these sandbags, and just sort of leant against them, just trying to make yourself as small as possible. And then once it all stopped, we realised, I think one of the Chinooks got hit, one of the big fuel bags got hit, that was on fire. The accommodation next to us got hit, the female lost her leg. And we looked under and there was an actual rocket underneath the accommodation.
Wow.
So we were quite lucky on that front. But yeah, the second tour was definitely the worst.
Yeah, well, I mean, just that one incident alone sounds enough to send anybody, kind of.
Yeah, and that noise is like the mortar noise is probably haunting to this day.
Right.
I think you were at the Palace.
Maybe OSB.
OSB, yeah. So.
But I remember one time I was the same with you, and me and Sean Hennessy, Stan, were, because we used to go to the gym together, and we were like, the mortar alarms were going off, getting mortared, and in the end we were like, do you know what? don't even care anymore. If it hits me, it hits me. We
Yeah.
just like carried on a workout.
It
Where,
became
like,
it became the norm. So once your alarm goes off, you hear the whistle or the mortar's coming over. You're like, if it hits me, it's me.
Yeah.
No matter if I sit down, you're going to get hit.
They teach you like to get under stuff. And you think,
Yeah.
what's this
So
table going to do?
The
Or what's this-
normalisation
yeah.
of just constant
But
threat.
the mortar that hit the female accommodation left a massive gaping hole, and the shrapnel from that went straight through the accommodation.
Wow.
And luckily, two of the girls, the medic girls, weren't. They were. I think they went on night patrol or morning patrol, so they weren't in their bed. But their bed was peppered with metal straight through it. So they'd have been
Yeah,
slept
they've
in
been
there.
shredded. Yeah.
The one girl, Kelly, she stood up and ran around in hysterics. Obviously, you just get woken up by a big, massive mortar in your accommodation.
Yeah.
And she ran over the hot metal, and all the shrapnel, and her feet were cut up to slashed to pieces. So yeah, and then when the girl lost her leg, the medics got her. At that moment, you're like, okay, this is the real deal now. We're in, because at this point it's definitely a case of you get complacent,
Right.
and it takes something like that to go, okay, I need to really switch on now, because this is getting quite serious, especially the second tour. Second tour was, like I said, the worst.
Well, I don't want to obviously make you relive the trauma that was the Iraq War, and I appreciate and thank you for sharing
No,
those
it's
parts
fine.
for us as well.
I'm at peace with that. I can talk about it. It's fine.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. I just, again, the horrors of that kind of timeline, and just war in general, is something that a lot of us will never understand, and hopefully never have to understand as well.
Yeah.
But again, thank you for sharing that with us. I think we should move past kind of deployment now. So you've done two deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan.
I didn't do Afghanistan.
You did
no.
Afghanistan.
No.
No? Okay. I don't know where I've got that from. Two tours of Iraq.
That was enough.
That's enough. So on that, after that second deployment, after the kind of having seen everything that you've seen, and it being as bad as it was, what came next for you?
I basically I was in recce troop, and I remember one of the captains pulled me aside and said, look, they offered me a thing called PODC, Potential Officers Development Course. They said you can go Sandhurst, do a year, and and then you can go and serve in a different regiment as an officer, whether they saw potential in me or whatever it may be. But at that point I was like, no, I'm leaving. I'm getting out.
So you were ready.
Yeah, I was ready to get out. Then they wanted to keep me, so they offered me like postings to the local army careers, which is based in Worcester.
Right.
So they do a lot of soldiers dangle the carrot, and it's very tempting. But at this point, the second tour, I was actually with my wife, my girlfriend at the time she was, and so it's like.
So between the two deployments is where you met your.
Yeah. 2005, I got with Zoe.
Okay.
And it got to the point where I was like, okay, it's time to get out now. It's time to sort of put this behind me. And because I spent a lot of time in Germany, and you go operational tour, then you go on training, so you could be in Canada. I mean, I did kind of Poland with recce troop.
Mm-hmm.
So you're very rarely at home. So it comes to a point where like, okay, I need to move on now and maybe go back into a sort of normal job. And going back to Iraq, we were involved in a big firefight and a big contact in the middle of Basra.
Right.
And that was a turning point for me.
I bet it was. Yeah.
Was
it made more? Did it weigh on you heavier the second time? As because you knew you had.
I think I was at an age where I was 20. I say an age, 20, 25, 26 years old, and it comes to a point where you're like, well, actually, unless I'm going to stay there full time,
mm-hmm.
I need to basically get out and start a life.
Yeah.
If I stay to my half pension, then I'll probably get stuck in the system,
right,
and have to stay and think, you know what, I might as well do a couple more years, and then before you know, I might as well do the 22 and then leave.
Right.
But when you, let's say, go back to Iraq, I was involved in one of the worst firefights in the regiment's history in the middle of Basra, where there's military crosses was awarded. So a friend of mine, Trooper Pike, he got shot in the legs. To witness what I witnessed that day completely changed my mindset again to, right, okay, this is, the war wasn't worth it.
Right.
But it was definitely a case of, okay, I need to get out now. I need to look after myself. But yeah, that day still slightly haunts me still a little bit, just thinking about it sometimes.
I bet.
But I remember coming out of the police station, and we used to take different routes just for security reasons. And I was saying to Ski earlier, I looked left, and there was an Iraqi with a big camera. And I remember thinking, that's strange. There's no traffic, but with a camera. But before I could even think about it, I looked right, and there's a bloke on one knee with an RPG. Fired it straight into the vehicle, 2 vehicles in front of me. Luckily, they were too close for it to detonate, and it bounced off. And I remember looking right, and within seconds, about 12 Iraqis come running out of AK-47s and absolutely fired everything they had at the 2 vehicles in front of me.
Oh my gosh.
So we had to return fire, and luckily Barney, who got awarded the military cross, he managed to dismount and hide behind a pile of rubbish and managed to take out quite a few of the insurgents. But what happened after the Geneva Convention, we got to treat first aid to the enemy as well.
Yep.
So I remember being one of the lads, I had a medic bag on me, running to the Iraqis out on the floor. Bear in mind, we've just fired GPMG, general purpose machine gun, 7.62 rounds at these people, and they are spread across the pavement. I remember going up to the one, and I remember seeing his heart physically.
Oh my god.
His bottom jaw gone, so we had caught him all around this area here, and it's moments that you start to see and you think, this isn't worth it. This is not what I want to. This is not how I want to end my life. And I don't want to be out here and go through it. So it was then where you're like, okay, enough's enough now. It's time to leave. Time to get out.
I know that you guys are trained for it, and I know that you've both been to the war zones and seen horrible things. But I can't imagine anything prepares you to see another human being in that kind of state either.
It's life changing, isn't it, when you go through something like that?
Yeah,
particularly, I think it's something that sticks with you.
Those visions, those. I mean, at the time, I was probably really angry because we just had a big firefight with them.
Of course, yeah.
And there was about 10 all on the floor. There was red mist up the walls. It was, I remember looking at it thinking, really, I almost wanted to. Well, I didn't treat them first aid to be fair because there's nothing we could do. So,
yeah.
But it was like, I'm glad that's you, not me.
It's a very, very tough spot to be in anyway. You've had to return fire. The damage is what it is, and you also are expected to give them first aid as well.
It's not until you come away from the environment, that situation, then you can sit down and calm down and actually think about it, and you realise, what have I just been through?
Yeah.
And even like now, 15, 20 years on, you still sit there and go, I shouldn't have saw that.
No, of course not. Yeah, no
human
absolutely.
should really see that sort of environment, but the army do train you well to sort of, and that's what I say, bottling those emotions.
Yeah.
All those thoughts, you're basically just bottling them up and leaving them in a box.
So if you could, before we get to you coming out now and sort of rejoining civilian life, what do you think is the number one lesson you can both answer this question actually? What's the number one takeaway from what you've been through, you've seen, the one bit of advice you would give to your son or the kind of generation below us at the moment? What's the one thing that you the one bit of wisdom you would impart on people? If you can't answer it now, we can come back.
Don't join the army.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want my son to join the military. That's for sure.
Yeah.
See, I'm the opposite. Even though what I've been through, I would want my son to join the army.
Interesting.
Even though what I've been through and seen, but I'd want him to go as an officer, because I think remove the operational tours away. I think the army, it changed my life.
I agree with you. It's good for a lot of things.
It's good for a lot of things, but then on the flip side, I would not want him to go through the visions and the emotions that I went through.
Right.
But I almost want him to go through the discipline and the training, but I don't want him to.
You want him to be a Renf?
Yeah.
So essentially, what we're saying is how the training and kind of the grueling part of getting to be a soldier is actually a very valuable thing for
massively
life, and gives you a lot of discipline and helps you grow up. But the rest of kind of the trauma that comes with being in a war zone, we can do without that.
Yeah,
I think it's the aftermath and the aftercare that I have issues with the military. I mean, I don't know about you, but they just chucked a load of beer at us and said, deal with it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, And it was like, just drink. Drink was like pushed on you to drink. And we used to drink
after that contact, we were back on patrol within 3 days.
That's right. So there was no support. There's no counselling. There was no
support whatsoever. Even when I left the military, it was a case of, okay, cheers, well done.
Yeah.
And you leave and you're fend on your own, basically. You leave the army and...
So this is a side that we hear a lot about more often now, I think, is the lack of, however, not emotional care, but I guess mental care for soldiers who go through hideous things and see just the worst trauma imaginable. Like you are in the battlefield, seeing people blown to bits, and you come away and you're being offered beer and a handshake, and then back on patrol. That feels so. It feels almost illegal to say it out loud. Like in civilian life, if something bad happens, you expect your employer to at least have a duty of care to want to see you through that to some degree. To hear that the army didn't do that for you is quite harrowing. I don't know. Obviously, we were only speaking from the experience that you had then. I don't know if it's changed.
The only support you get from the army is from your friends within the army.
Right.
If it wasn't for Ski setting up the Warrior Within project, there'd be a lot of soldiers around here that wouldn't have the support.
I agree, yeah.
And I think the only support you get is when soldiers and veterans talk to each other. You don't get any support from the sort of government hierarchy level. You get it from your local, your close friends within the army. And that's the only way I can put it, really. There's no support. Well, certainly when I left, there was no. I don't know if it's changed now, but there's certainly no support for personnel leaving the army.
It's terrifying to think about, but obviously that is what brought you to kind of creating the Warrior Within project in the first place, and I think it's a good place to kind of push it slightly now. Once again, just remind people that the project is there for veterans who have come out and need that extra support, right?
Correct, and it's totally, there's no payment for a veteran to come along to any of our sessions, and you can find out about us on all the social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and this podcast will be aired on YouTube in a few days' time. We'll put out the date and stuff so people get to see it. Well, you're seeing it now anyway.
Yeah.
So it's we're there for all veterans, any part of the armed forces, even serving military and families. So I think it's important that we provide support. If no one's going to support us, we have to support each other.
I fully agree, and I see the work you do with people, and I get to be a bit of a passenger to the interesting people that you've met along the way as well, which is great, and get to sit here and hear your story. So it's great for that, and I just want to kind of move past a little bit from the Iraq War, because I am conscious that that must have been an awful time. And I know you say you're comfortable speaking about it, but I don't really want to make you relive too much of it. Yeah. It's a lot, I imagine.
So how was the transition from when you left the military back into civilian street? Because you haven't got any of your buddies around now. At the moment, you probably got a few in Worcester.
Yeah, there's a few lads in Worcester that were in the regiment, so we all stay quite close. So I had that network then. But the transition for me wasn't too bad. I mean, it took me a while to find out what I wanted. I knew I wanted to go back into an industry. I came from stonemasonry.
Okay.
So I literally got a job back to being stonemason.
So this is a skill you've just kind of retained throughout.
Yeah. So I became a stonemason prior to the army. I did my apprenticeship and then I went in the army.
Right.
So I was one of the lucky ones. I got a skill before the army. So I left, went back into that because that's all I knew. And I moved in with Zoe, but I was in a lot of debt. So there's a very dark as a lot of soldiers are probably, and a lot of financial problems due to just getting credit cards and living like there's no tomorrow.
Right.
I think it's one of those scenarios where I might not come back from this war, so I'm going to go out and enjoy myself. And then when you come back, you're like, I'm going to enjoy myself. Right. So you do get yourself into a bit of financial problems in terms of I used to have cars and I used to have credit cards and go out partying and living that lifestyle.
And I imagine that caused a lot of tension between yourself and your partner.
I mean, when I left the army, I moved in, but my wife Zoe is very good at finances. To the point where she put me on a £20 a week budget.
Oh, did she?
to clear my debts.
Right.
I don't think she wanted to sort of move forward with me unless I was sort of financially better in terms of with my money.
Completely understand.
Yeah. But yeah, so she was an absolute angel. When it comes to that, put me in straight and narrow, and I cleared my debts. It took me a while. I lived on £20 a week. If I wanted to go out drinking with my friends, I'd have to sort of save for a couple of weeks and then go out drinking. I mean, you couldn't do it now. 40 quid will get you around now.
No, it wouldn't.
But yeah, no, I'd sort of left the army, went back to becoming a stonemason, lived on a budget, and then literally carried on with my masonry.
So when you say you carried on with your masonry, my understanding is you built a bit of a empire for yourself out of doing so.
Yeah, so the company I work for, they started to struggle through the recession, and they started to pay me with their credit card.
So this was 2008 recession?
2008.
Yeah.
2008. I left the army in 2007, so I've been working for a year now. And they struggled to pay my wages. They used credit cards to pay my bills. They started to really struggle.
Right.
And at that point, I'm like, we just got a mortgage. William, 2008, no? William wasn't around then, was he? No. I'm trying to think then.
He's 15.
Yeah, just then. But so it was. I've lost train of thought now. But so yeah, they started paying me a credit card, and it wasn't secure enough for me. So I then got a job in a factory, doing shift work, and between shifts, I set up my own company.
Right. Okay.
So I still had an income for paying the bills and paying my way, but then between the shifts I was setting up my own business.
Okay.
I thought I got to take control of myself, and I had a purpose. It's back to when I was working for somebody, I didn't feel like I had a purpose.
Right.
And having this business, and the reason I got involved in business actually was because of my wife again. So she worked for a company, a business travel company, and exposed me to sort of 5-star hotels.
Right.
I was exposed to that side, which I've never really experienced in my life, being in the army and coming from a normal background. And I remember going to Las Vegas for her boss's 50th.
Right.
He invited us all to Vegas, and I thought, boss Simon, an absolute legend. And I looked at him, I thought, wow, he's giving to people. And I thought, I'd love to be in a position to help people and do that.
Yeah.
He's done it for us. We got to Vegas. I mean, he paid for us. Well, we went to Florida with him.
Wow.
And I just thought that would be great to be able to give back.
Yeah, fully.
So I set up my own business and got a job in a factory doing shifts to be able to do that.
So I mean, you've told that story like it's not a big deal, but that's actually quite a big deal. That you've come up with you formulated a plan in your head. You've decided you know what exactly, you've kind of manifested what you actually want in life, and you've gone and got it. Like, talk us about the journey.
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult. I had to convince the wife that it was doable.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a clue, if I'm honest. I didn't really know if it was going to go well or not, which you never do.
Sure.
Once we got into the market space of what we were doing, we realised the market was saturated. So I literally really struggled. So I then thought, well, I never had no money. So the wife maxed our credit card of £6,000, and we converted my garage into a little workshop.
Okay.
And I started to sell headstones, memorials, things like that. But like I said, the market was saturated by other companies with funeral directors and all sorts. So I had to think of something else. I had to come at a different angle. So I used to every Sunday morning set up on a car boot.
Okay.
Which is a strange thing to do, set up headstones on a car boot.
It's a classic thing
and
to do.
The footfall was massive.
Mm-hmm.
The footfall's I thought, well, for a tenner, I'm getting a lot of people here. But I did have a lot of negativity, people going, oh, I can't believe there's headstones in the car boot,
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, massive. And there's people next to me who set up selling their second-hand stuff, would pack and move.
Oh, really?
Away from me.
That's
they didn't want to be around the headstones.
I've seen worse things than headstones at a car boot.
I had to think outside the box. And I did that. And it took a while, and then I started to generate orders through that.
Right. Okay.
I mean, we're talking a couple of thousand a week orders through the car boot.
Perfect.
So it started to do okay. And I was still doing my shift work. So I was doing about 20-hour days. Between shifts, I was outfitting memorials. I was trying to think of things to do. And it was draining, put it that way.
Oh, I bet it was.
20 hours a day work and doing night shifts and day shifts and that. It was difficult. But and the wife managed the sort of admin side of it, finances.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I never had the wife, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. The bottom line is, you always need that network, and I could never do the sort of academic side of the business. So the wife did that, and I did the practical what I knew. So it was definitely a combination that worked really well.
Well,
And but I did it at a real awkward time in my life. Set up the business
I bet.
4 months prior to getting married, and so it was.
I mean, it's a lot to build a business. It's a lot to have just come out of the...
And trying to organise a wedding.
And organise a wedding, yeah, exactly.
So the wife was juggling quite a lot.
While also proving, that you can be the man that she expects you to be with your finances as well. Like, so much happening.
I think it goes back to the army days, where in the army you feel part of something, and you feel somebody, you got a purpose. You walk around with your head held high. And I think when you leave the army, I think a lot of people struggle because you become average Joe.
Yeah.
You become the next factory work. You all of a sudden you get put back in your box. And I didn't like that. And I wanted to be somebody that some people looked up to. So I could walk around with my head held high and have a bit of respect. And that's the reason, probably one of the other reasons I went into business, is I wanted to make something of myself, but also make people and my parents and my family proud, and do the best I can, really, and also get to the point where, like, as always, old boss, and try and enjoy the finer things a little bit.
Well, that's it. If you build it, you should get to enjoy the finer things.
I think the thing is, with especially like your own business, and then people see your success, they don't realise all of the risk taking you went through, and all of the 20-hour days you went through, and then not sleeping, and all the other stuff you had to go through to get where you are, and working in your garage and going to car boots and putting all that groundwork in. For 2 years,
I worked in the factory and did car boots for 2 years.
Yes,
and then eventually, settled up to what it is now.
People only ever see the results, right? They don't see the work.
Yeah, it's like they talk about the iceberg. They see the tip. And they say, "Oh, look, this guy's got a good life. This must be easy for him." They didn't see all that stuff he went through, man, to get there.
No. But so just, you don't have to give us the financials of your business here, but like, where's your business at this day and age?
Just over $1 million turnover.
Wow.
I employ 10 people. I've got 2 premises. Got a large factory with CNC machines, big saws, 2 forklifts, offices. Got a showroom in the Worcester City Centre, which is dedicated to the monumental side of it all, because it's a bit more of a sensitive subject, so you needed somewhere calmer and nicer for people to go, rather than being like a big factory environment. I still look back and think I probably don't do it enough. I sit back and go, wow. Yeah. Because I'm always striving for the next step and not appreciate what I've achieved.
Well,
and that's something I'm sort of learning and focusing on at the moment, trying to appreciate where I am.
You've definitely achieved a lot you just talking about car boot sales to having, your own employees, a factory and, showroom. That's a lot. That's
a lot of stress as well.
Yeah, but anything worth having is hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you've definitely proven that.
Stress is a privilege.
What do you do to deal with the stress and that kind of stuff? Because I know you're into your fitness and
I do. I think in business there's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, because you've now got X amount of guys relying on you to bring the work in. Yep. Now you're paying their mortgages and they're helping you pay your mortgage, sort of scenario. So it's very hard to switch off, really hard. And the wife will tell you, I'm 24/7, constantly. Every payday I stress. Yeah. I'm like, we're going to go pay his wages out again, got to pay his bills. So my de-stress is definitely going to the gym.
Okay.
It's the only time I really feel present is in the gym, because all I'm focusing on is the next rep, the next lift. Yep. Or I go for like walks or hikes, and once again that's back to nature. I mean, like we were saying earlier, you lose the outside noise. Yeah. You're removing all that noise and social media and things like that. So you go for nice hikes, and just really with your own thoughts and sort of breathing exercises on your hikes, things like that, and just really concentrate on being present. Fully.
It's obviously we were talking at the cafe before we came in here, but I do think it's a lesson that everybody younger than me should learn very, very quickly, or everybody should learn just in general. Like, you've got to learn very, very quickly to... there's a buzzing. Before we got interrupted, we were talking about kind of cancelling out the noise and how we deal with stress, particularly within jobs that are particularly stressful. So we were talking a bit about the gym, talking about kind of cancelling out the noise of daily life, and that's more or less where we got to before that annoying beeping started. So I guess one thing before we kind of move on ever so slightly is because you've got this wealth of experience both from the army and business as well. Like neither of these things are easy to do. Neither of these things are without huge challenges. And in between these points, you've got married and you've had a son as well. What would be the advice you would give to your son?
It's a tough one. I try and advise him all the time on, but then my advice is never, in his eyes, the right advice.
Right.
So I'm quite hard on him. I am quite hard because I always feel the harder you are, the harder they become.
Right.
And life isn't easy. Get used to it.
Yeah.
It's not, sunshines and roses. It's not. You're going to come across very difficult times, and the harder your mindset is, the better you are as a person. And I think I always try and make him go to the gym if I can, and try and push him just to prove to himself more than anything else that your body will go further than your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your mind is a strong thing, but your body will go quite far if you push it. Like today, for example, he didn't want to do it, and he did it, and he did the best of his ability, and he probably feels better for it now. But the one advice I'd probably give to him would be just try and enjoy the journey, not the destination.
That's great advice.
Because the destination ultimately is death.
The grave, yeah. So we were talking about obviously advice to give to your son, and you gave some good advice there, which I think it was relevant to everybody, which is appreciate the journey and not the destination. I think that's
not to chase. I've been guilty of it, chasing money, but I think Warren Buffett said it: money is numbers never end. So you're chasing forever. You're never going to be happy.
And one thing I've learned is most of that money doesn't even exist. It's numbers on a screen, right?
Yeah.
You say £1 million turnover, it's not £1 million in cash.
It certainly exists when you pay wages.
Exactly. It's numbers on a screen and you're doing a transaction,
But it's. Like I said, I've been guilty of chasing money in the past. But you do when you get involved in business. You have to chase the money to pay the bills and pay, and grow the business. It's now I'm trying to train myself to sort of enjoy the journey and not chase the money, because a byproduct of enjoying the journey would be the money will come.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But just enjoy it and just enjoy the journey, not destination. Because ultimately, you're old before you know it.
Yeah.
And then, you look back and I try to live a life with no regrets if I can. I've done quite well so far. But I've got to keep myself busy and my mind busy.
Talking about journeys and destinations, I know you've done quite a few expeditions and all these other things that you've enabled yourself to be able to do now, which is some of the highlights of those.
So the army, you do events training, and when you leave, if you were to do that in Civilian Street, it would cost an absolute fortune. But I'm very much want to try and pursue these sort of challenges internationally. So back, I think it was 2014, I decided to cycle across Tanzania.
Wow.
And we started at the base of Kilimanjaro. We cycled, there's about 400 miles, right to a crater, the Ngora crater, which has got lions and wildebeest and all sorts. Did a bit of safari at the end of it all. But that was me physically challenging myself and mentally challenging myself, but also experiencing the world, which is what I'm really passionate about, and that's what I really want my son to do, is experience the world, because it opens your mind. It opens doors, it opens your mind. You don't get stuck in your bubble. Whilst I was in Tanzania, I spent a few days with the Maasai tribe.
Wow.
Which, once again, they're not chasing money. They seem very, very happy. And I remember staying with them and living in one of these little mud huts with them. And it was the worst night's sleep ever. It was literally bits of stick intertwined and on leaves. It was it was terrible, especially after cycling 100 miles to get there. And it's I could do a good night's sleep, but no. But it was sort of a bit of a surreal moment. I was sat there, it must have been about 1 a.m, and you can see Kilimanjaro one side, and you look the other way, you got Mount Meru. And you're in the middle of nowhere, there's no light pollution, nothing, and you got the cattle in the middle. And you can hear hyenas coming in to get to the cattle, so you have to sort of grab a spear and run out and chase them away. So that sort of thing was a bit surreal.
I bet, yeah.
And I remember sitting there with the chief Maasai, and I had conversations, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I became a Maasai warrior? Not that I could use it back in the UK, but it'd be just great story to tell my kids and my grandkids. And I had the conversation, said, what does it take to become a Maasai warrior? And he told me, and at that point I was like, no, you're okay. And what it involves is circumcision.
Wow.
Okay.
But you have to at the age of 14 with no painkillers, and you cannot shed a tear, and you cannot show any discomfort for 3 to 4 weeks after having it chopped off.
And if you do show any of these weaknesses,
you can. This back to
out.
this strength, this back to this discipline.
Gosh.
So a lot of the I used to look at all the Maasai thinking, you've all had your you've all been
chopped off with no
painkillers. Chopped off, but he showed me the knife they do it with, and this knife was it was rusty,
like
old,
a rusty old
but they heat it
peanut.
up. It was just like
potato peeler.
Yeah, it was like it had been found by a metal detector in the River Thames. It was just an old rusty knife, and what they do, they heat it up so hot,
right?
It turns blue, and which obviously then once they slice off the skin, it basically burns all the ends and it seals it, cauterizes it. Yeah, so it literally.
How the hell do you keep a tear or screaming?
At 14 years old as well.
Yeah,
you have to go through
that's
that.
Serious, like mental power.
Yeah, so
pain power.
You think that's quite cool, but you think, well, actually, it shows discipline, it shows mental strength.
Yeah.
It shows all those attributes.
I don't want to be in that tribe either.
No,
I was thinking about it myself.
I decided not to, and I sort of soon left that tribe and went on my jolly ways.
I bet you found a different sort of respect for them after that.
Yeah,
like you see them in a different light.
It's just their way of life. I think on some of the other ventures as well, you just see a different culture. That's
the most important thing to teach our kids, like me. I want my kids to say, look, go travelling on your own. See different cultures. It's not like it is in the Western world.
Yeah.
There's a whole big world out there. People do things differently, and you can take a lot from those different cultures and put them in your own life, right?
Yeah, you take little bits from different cultures and bring it into your own life.
Yeah.
And you'll be a lot happier person.
Wow.
So the Africa trip was an experience.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be bike riding after that either.
No. And I cycled with a few people. There's a few females in the group, and every village you went to, the locals would try and push the women off the bikes.
Would they?
It was real bizarre. Okay. It's not something that I thought would happen, but they'd be chasing the women down and try and push them off their bikes. So I'd have to cycle amongst these girls because I was 6-foot bloke. And hopefully I'd be some sort of deterrent. And as it was, they would try and put sticks in their spokes and knock them off the bikes. Yeah, it was.
For what reason? What were they going to do? Like kidnap them and run away with them?
They just basically, I don't think they liked the females at this point. Yeah, it was just
different cultures, though, isn't it? People don't understand. There's things are done differently around the world.
The first village, I thought it was just kids messing around, to seeing a group of Westerners cycle through a village. But as we got through more and more villages, it was the same pattern. But they wouldn't touch the males of the group. They're just trying to attack the females. So we had to sort of make sure there was a couple of blokes cycling with the women to sort of stop
like being back in the army doing
protection
again.
Yeah, I felt like I should be getting paid for this.
I imagine quite terrifying for the women as well.
Yeah. So they were a bit worried and nervous, but we assured them that we're with them and wouldn't leave them. So yeah.
Well, you were talking before as well that you've also been to Mount Everest, right?
Yeah, so after Africa, I actually flew to Phoenix, Arizona, and jumped on the push bike and cycled the length of the Grand Canyon. So I cycled from Phoenix, Arizona, all the way to Las Vegas, and then spent 2 nights in Vegas. And I think I was suffering more from the 2 nights in Vegas than I was the cycle. But no, that was a completely different, because you're in the Western world, and you're cycling. I think it was about 350, 400 miles. Followed the Grand Canyon, which the views were incredible.
Yeah, I think we've got some pictures up on the screen for people to see at the moment.
So that was really good and actually quite emotional, because it was such a challenge. I never thought how hilly Arizona was. It is so hilly.
Right.
And I remember actually getting to the end, and I did it with a good friend of mine whose dad lost his dad to cancer. And at the end, we had a hug, and I actually got quite emotional.
Right.
Because I'd done these events before, and it was his first time he had done an event. And he got a little bit emotional, and I got a bit emotional for him. And it was quite a sad moment. because we've exhausted ourselves as well.
Yeah.
We got to the finish line, so all the emotions came out, and that was another challenge that I did, and raised some money for children with cancer on that one. The Africa trip, I raised a few £1,000s for the local hospice.
Right.
And like you said, I then went to Mount Everest. Now, that was something I've dreamt of as a kid. Everest was, because I think it was just the first time you sort of hear about it. It's the biggest mountain, the highest peak. You think, I want to go to Everest. I want to go and summit it and get to the top. Never once did I ever think that it would actually become a reality.
Yeah.
I never summited Everest because it was just far too much money and the danger was too high. I got a family and I just didn't want, and so, but it was my 40th birthday and the wife purchased, she gave me an option. She gave me, because I'm into my mountain biking a little bit, she gave me 2 options, electric mountain bike or a trip to Everest, and she'd pay for it. And all day long I chose Everest.
Yeah, amazing.
I went to Everest and I hiked away to base camp, and then next to base camp there's another mountain called Kalapatar. It's just short of 6,000 meters, and then from there you can see the sunrise over Everest. That's the closest I'm ever going to get to Everest. But that hike alone was 14 days of 14 hours a day.
Wow.
Of hiking. So once again, what I learned in the army, the discipline and the mental strength, I mean, that was a mental battle more than a physical, because every single day you're getting up and you're walking.
Yeah. You're high
altitude,
above sea level, right? So the oxygen level's really low, right?
We had a doctor with us and he would take our oxygen levels every single day. Now, during COVID, you got put into hospital or ventilator if your oxygen levels dropped by, I think, below 80%. Well, we got to base camp, 5,000 meters, we were running about 40% oxygen levels. And my heart rate walking was 180.
God.
So I would just feel really exhausted just walking. I'm thinking, I'm just walking, but because of the lack of oxygen. And there was a few people on the expedition that actually flew down by helicopter because they were just couldn't make it, couldn't do it. And we slept in these little tea houses every night, but the temperature dropped drastically the higher we got.
Right.
So we had to sleep with these like water bottles in our sleeping bag just so we had water in the mornings because everything's frozen.
Right.
And it was really uncomfortable. And when you sleep in about 5,000 meters, went to a little town called Gorka Shep, and when you start sleeping at that altitude, you have panic attacks because you're not getting enough oxygen in. So when you sleep, your heart rate drops, your breathing slows down, and literally it just comes from where you can't get enough oxygen.
Right.
So you start trying to get your breath during your sleep and you start having little panic attacks. So that was the last probably 3 or 4 days. I didn't really sleep a great deal. But like I say, that challenge was mentally and physically. But I think subconsciously, all I'm trying to do is, I enjoy the trips I do, and I love them. But I think ultimately I just want to show my son more than anything that if you put your mind to it and apply it, you can achieve it.
Fully.
And not sit back, and stick to the 8 till 5 system. If you want to do something, you've got to put yourself out there and get it done.
It all starts with this, right?
Yeah.
Because you have the thought from a child, you wanted to do it, and you literally manifested it, and your life turned out the way it did, and you did what you always set out you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I think if you've got a dream inside of you, especially for a younger person, then as long as you fully believe in yourself and you do everything you can to achieve that, then you'll get it. But
it was. I've never been really scared, apart from obviously on an Iraq tour and things like that. But the one part that sticks out for me for Everest was landing in Lukla being the world's most dangerous airport with the shortest runway. And I remember flying into that, and the airplane was, I don't know how it passed as MOT. It was it was like shower curtains between you and the pilot, and they were wearing flip flops, and we flew in, and I remember coming around one of the corner of the mountains and seeing Lukla Airport, thinking, surely we can't land on that. Because it's on the side of the mountain.
Yeah.
And as we were landing, they have to stall the engine to act as a brake. So just before we landed, the alarm was going off, everything. So as they land, everything just goes like literally handbrake on. You hold onto your seat, The alarm's going off, and eventually you stop, but about probably 6 feet away from the wall at the end of the runway.
Terrifying.
So that was a moment where I've obviously Googled and watched YouTube videos on it all. That was probably the only nervous part.
But these pilots, I mean, they do that every day, don't they? So
yeah,
it's normal,
they're the best
isn't it,
pilots in the world because of the environment they fly in. But yeah,
and they're just doing it all by hand.
But still, when they're sat there in flip flops behind a shower curtain, you're just like, really, you know.
I don't want to go this way.
Yeah, I mean, I've done plenty of helicopter flights and plane flights in the past, but that was, that was another level of fear. Should I say?
Never wear white trousers doing that one.
No,
that's what I'd say.
But they gave us a kit list to go out there, massive kit list, and you think, okay, I need all this stuff, but you can only take like 10 kilograms on that flight. So I then had to, in Kathmandu, cut my kit in half to only take a little bit because these flights can only have so much weight. God. So yeah, I was missing a few home luxuries on that hike, but it was, it was an incredible experience, and once again, it probably changed my mindset again, and to move me forward in the future.
Well. Firstly, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and talking to us today, and sharing your stories. It's amazing to hear about people who have seen the things you've done and accomplished the things you've accomplished as well. And we appreciate you coming and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Obviously to Stefan and the Warrior Within, this is your podcast. Even though I've done all the talking, I have to hear my voice, unfortunately. But this is your project, and this is what your project is all about, and that is. Veterans and people who have gone through the system, seeking help, learning a new way to not express themselves, but vent the traumas they've seen, and hearing stories of other people and what they've been through is all part and parcel of that journey, I think. And as somebody who can only be a passenger to these stories, it's a privilege and an honor to be able to sit here and do that. So thank you very much to yourself and Stefan as well.
Thank you for helping us host it, and Tom coming all the way down from Worcester with his family. He had a nice time here in Plymouth, and we did a bit of training and got stuck into that. So
and you're excellent, by the way. Yeah, both yourself and your son. We full effort. That's what we care about. As long as you got a heart, as you would say.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah. Well. I think this is probably a good place to leave it there. We've had a few technical difficulties along the way, which we'll figure out as we go into editing. But thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you for coming and seeing us today. Thank you to your family for allowing us to borrow you and having to sit there and recount some of these stories themselves. And we appreciate it massively. Stefan, anything you want to finish on?
Just shout out if you, obviously subscribe on the YouTube channel and check us out on the social media. You see some more podcasts coming. And if you're a veteran in particularly, reach out to us and we'll support and help you where we can. And thank you very much to everybody involved.
Tom, any final words?
No, just enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey. Perfect. Well, thank you ever so much, and you can catch us again, and we're probably going to do this once a month, I think is the plan.
Yeah.
We'll work out the technical kinks as we go, and to everybody that's been watching, thank you so much for your time. For everyone listening, thank you also for your time, and we will catch you next time.